Okay, so I'd like to talk about the future of UX and intelligent interfaces at Mercedes-Benz. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the products we've worked on, and more than that, sort of the philosophies we've had behind it. So you can see how we think about intelligent interfaces and how we see the interface of the future. So as mentioned earlier, I'm, in fact, Andrew Hill. I'm Director of Machine Learning and Predictive UX at MB in Sunnyvale, California. So like most of you guys, we've got a small research group in Silicon Valley, and there we work on really the Silicon Valley topics, which right now comes down to a lot of machine learning and data-driven products. So I hope I don't have to convince any of you guys that UI is important, but just in case, we see a lot of people when they talk about UI and they say, yeah, UI is very important today, but what happens in the future when we're dealing with cars that are connected, autonomous, shared, and electric, where you just dial from your phone and a car comes automatically to your house, it's ready to pick you up, it's full charge, and you just get in the car and go. What role does the UI have in this case? Is the center stack still important? Or do we all just get in it like a bus and pick up our iPhones? And when we think about that, we say, well, what is the role of the UI in the premium market when the car is fully autonomous? So if we just think about it as a small thought experiment, we can dial a robotaxi. And the robotaxi arrives, and you get inside of it. And you're not sure if it's the right one. There's no Uber driver saying, hey, are you Andrew, are you Andrew, are you Adam, maybe? And I'm not going to let this one go, actually. And you get in, and you hate the radio station. So you have to fumble with the radio controls, and the seats are set up wrong, and nothing's the way you like it. And because it's a shared vehicle, every time you get in this robotaxi, is it going to be like this every time? Is your car experience going to be like getting on a city bus? And from our perspective, in the premium market, this is not the intention. We want the car to be set up for you exactly the way you want it. It knows who you are. So it gets in, it says, welcome, Andrew. We've set your radio station. The seats are the way you like it. The heater's the way you like it. And we already know where you're going, and we're ready to go. And so when we look at this, when we look at the future, we see that all these interfaces have to be intelligent in the premium market. So with this in mind, we recently developed the MBUX. So MBUX is the new head unit that we announced in Las Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show in January. The MBUX will first debut in the A-Class, and we actually launched the A-Class a little bit after we launched MBUX. Now, ordinarily, when the car companies do a release, we show the car. It's got a bunch of horsepower, gets great gas mileage, and by the way, there's a head unit in it. This isn't the way we're looking at it today. So we said, first, we show the telematics system, and we show it at the Consumer Electronics Show because we see the car here as the ultimate consumer electronics device. And we say that this system has awesome connectivity. Over-the-air updates, it uses NLP for speech processing. It's got fantastic graphics powered by an NVIDIA processor that really has real-time 3D rendering for everything, and it has an intelligent learning system. It's this intelligent learning system that I want to talk about a little bit. So with this, we're bringing artificial intelligence into the head unit, specifically for UX optimization and extreme personalization. So a lot of times people come forward with a feature, and they tack it on to the existing system, and they say, look, we did it, here it is. This isn't the case with artificial intelligence and MBUX. We really designed the entire system from the ground up to take into account this idea of predictive UX. So with the predictive UX, we can dramatically simplify the user experience. We can have this right here on the main screen as you see it, a mixed list of all the things that you might want to do right now. And these are based on who you are, it's based on what time it is, it's based on what day of the week it is, it's based on where the car is right now. And so with this contextual information, we can give you exactly the information that you want today and now without having major sensory overload from a very complex system. So with this system, we can recommend which of your contacts you might want to call. Apparently, I'd like to call Dita Zetcher right now. It shows you where you might want to go so that you don't have to manually type in these navigation destinations. Because let's face it, even on a website or Google Maps on your phone, entering a destination is difficult on every platform, in voice, on the web, everywhere. So here, if we know exactly where you're going and make it very easy to go to it with a single click, then you're able to get live traffic information, you can find POIs along the route, and you get all this rich information that's really only possible. Furthermore, if we detect you're already driving to a place we think you're going, we'll just start the route guidance in the background silently with no, without the voice prompt, so it doesn't distract you. But so that if you then want to say, find me a gas station along the route, or do I even have enough gas to get there, it's automatically set up and ready for that. So I don't want to give too much of a sales pitch on this, but this was sort of the idea behind the thinking. So now I said that we have the intelligence everywhere. And this is because we think about it from the ground up throughout all the menus and systems. So one of the things to look into when you're designing AI systems is what's the design philosophy behind the AI. So for a lot of our stuff, we settled on this stumble upon philosophy. And the idea behind this is that everywhere that you go, if we can shorten up your activity, we're going to find a way to do that in the UX. We're not going to make you go to predicted destinations menu or what do I want to do now menu. We want to give you the menu along the pathway that you are doing anyway. And this is because predictive systems aren't always right. In fact, any intelligent system is often wrong. I'm wrong pretty often. Sometimes my name is wrong. And so what we want to do is make sure that in these predictive systems, we make sure that if something's wrong, it doesn't cause the user any pain, and the user still perceives it as an intelligent system. So when we look at spellers, we know that spellers aren't the easiest systems in the world to use. And so as you're typing something into the speller, we have autocomplete. But autocomplete can be very complicated, still give you a lot of options. So as we autocomplete, we take into account other things you might do in this place and time. So in this example, you can see that at a similar context, that's date, time, location, other factors like that, I might go to the Hertz Fairmont Hotel. And so with this, you come along. If your item's in the menu, you find it. And it's easy, and you don't have to worry about it. If it's not there, you type it in the speller exactly like you were planning to do when you started the activity. The same's true whenever we have lists. So here we have something like the recent calls lists, and you can also see it in things like recent destinations lists and things like this. So you're planning on coming to this list to scroll through the list and find an item that's in the list. So the things you're most likely to do, we put up the top. So if you stumble upon these items as you go through it, you're delighted. You save some time, you save some energy, you can concentrate on driving. If not, it's exactly the interaction that you're expecting to do either, to scroll through a list based on recency. And this is unchanged. And so this is the general design philosophy and concept that we try to do throughout here, that we put predictions and artificial intelligence front and center on the main UI, and then throughout the other components of the UI, anywhere where we can shorten up the dialogue without creating extra steps, we use machine intelligence there as well. So let's talk a little bit about how we do this. So what we did in MBUX is all an example of dynamic content, where we have some fixed areas in the HMI where we want to put some information based on context. So if you imagine that we have a standard kind of UI flow diagram, and we can see in the graph some areas here where we have dynamic content. Now, traditionally, we can say the dynamic content is just a list of contacts, a list of addresses, something like this. But what if the dynamic content itself is further UI flow? That is, that more UI windows and additions into the UX graph make up the dynamic content itself. So this basically takes us in this idea of dynamic UI. And there's a couple really cool things that dynamic UI lets us do. So let's imagine I have a set of windows here. And there's 4 leaf nodes that I want to get to, whatever those might be. And there's some way to get to them. Assuming people are going to use them sort of equally, you might say, we'll balance things very nicely and have everything take an equal amount of steps, equal amount of time, equal amount of cognitive load to reach. And this can obviously change based on user studies of what you see. But fundamentally, if you're providing the same thing to everybody, it's going to be based on some aggregate of usage. Now, say when I'm driving, these are the percentage time, or say percentage of drives where I hit these. So the first leaf node, say I use this UI screen 84% of my trips, so almost always. And the one on the far side, only 4% of the trips. So this is obviously not an optimal UI graph for my particular usage. And for my usage, I'd rather see something like this. Having a very unbalanced UI graph gets dangerous when you have to work with the average customer. Once you're dealing with dynamic content, dynamic layout, and a dynamic HMI, all these concerns go away, and you can provide an experience that's optimal for one particular customer. This can dramatically reduce cognitive load, dramatically increase safety, I'll claim, and can really make the system much less confusing and easier to use for the common case. So, in general, I'm going to hammer on this point a fair bit. So intelligence is about decision making. Whether this is human intelligence or an AI's intelligence, what distinguishes an agent as intelligent is the ability to make decisions. If it's simply providing information, it might be very clever information, might be some connected services or something like this, but it's just information. If I still have to look at it and make my own decision based on provided information, I still have the difficult cognitive task of sorting through information and making a decision based on it. And if you just have a concierge service that gives you a bunch of information and then you have to make the final call on it, this doesn't give you the same benefit when it comes to an enjoyable and intuitive system as it does if the system makes decisions for you. So when we talk about what can an AI bring to a system, it's really the ability to make decisions for you. So these decisions get based on context. So let's just take a nice, easy example of context. And I live in Santa Cruz, a lovely place on the beach. I like it very much. I work in Sunnyvale. It's a great place to work. It's the heart of Silicon Valley. And there's tons of companies you can work with there and have great partnerships. The big problem, as you can see, is there's a mountain range in between them. Okay, it's not a very big mountain range, so it's not a really big problem. But it really gets in the way of one thing I like to do every morning, and that's listen to NPR. So when I'm listening to NPR in Santa Cruz, I have to dial to 90.3. When I'm at work, I need to be on 88.5. There's no reception in the other situations. So this might seem like a bit of an edge case on my particular experience, but we see this sort of behavioral things quite a lot. We see people that like to listen to talk radio news in the morning, but then podcasts at the end of the day. And we see people that always travel to home from work, but starting from home, they go to myriad places. And so there's always this contextual element to what people do and how they think. And this is mine. So I start here in Santa Cruz, and I say it's very, very likely I'm listening to 90.3 for my NPR. Now, there's some chance that maybe I am listening to 88.5. Maybe that one day there is reception. Maybe I just forgot to change it and we're listening to static, but at a very low volume. So nothing's ever 100%. So we'll say there's an 80% chance that I want to listen to 90.3. Then I start driving across the hill, and when I get to the summit, I'm looking at about a 50-50 chance that I'll listen to either 88.5 or 90.3. And this is an interesting point, because this is where the system can detect, hey, you're currently listening to 90.3, but it sure looks like this is about where you start switching over to 88.5. And then finally, when I get to work, I'm listening to 88.5 almost exclusively, and 90.3 has no reception. So in this case, if we look at that changeover point, this is the critical point where a decision needs to be made. And in this situation, it's very clear. Every time I drive from home to work, or at least most of the time, I do this changeover at this point. And we're gathering 2 data points every single day when I drive to work and then drive home, 10 points a week, 20 points a month, etc. And so in this case, the model knows a lot about me. And so in this case, you can say that the AI is going to be so certain that instead of just providing me with the option to change my radio station, maybe it just does it for me, because it knows that I'm going to make that decision, so why force me to make that decision for me? Now, this isn't always the case, and this is why we have to look into how certain the model is of itself, how much trust the model has in the context, and therefore how much trust the user should have in the artificial intelligence. So as a quick example, imagine it's 2 a.m. in the middle of Utah. I don't spend a lot of time in Utah at 2 in the morning. So in this situation, if we say, hey, what music should I listen to? I listen to NPR pretty much every day. So not knowing what else to do at 2 a.m. in the middle of Utah, maybe it says, hey, let's listen to NPR. But then the question is how confident are we in that? We just base that on just the idea that I listen to NPR a lot, and not that this is a good thing to do at 2 a.m. in the middle of Utah, when I imagine it's way out of range of any of those frequencies. So we need to think about decision-making in terms of model uncertainty. And this is one of the things that we're really pushing, because it allows you to do a lot of these proactive use cases. So imagine this machine learning model. For ease of use, we can pretend that the inputs down the bottom, maybe that's time of the day. And maybe on the y-axis for the outputs, we have temperature. But in general, this can be any set of inputs and outputs, and usually these get into very high dimensional space. So when you take into account time of day, day of week, latitude, longitude, number of people in the cars, all these sort of things, you end up with these weird graphs that actually exist in 5, 6, 7 dimensions. They're almost impossible to visualize. So we'll go with this for now, just to make it a little easier to understand. And so say if we have this, this general idea of some inputs, some outputs, according to our statistical machine learning model. Now let's add uncertainty to it. So this is basically where you evaluate the certainty of the model at each point, and we determine how sure we are of the system. So you can see that if we look here at input of, say, 5 p.m. or whatever, we have a really good idea of what the user wants to do. And this corresponds maybe to me driving across the mountains, listening to 90.3. And it says, you are definitely going to switch the radio station now. I know this is what you're going to do. There's a 90% chance of it, and I'm 90% certain in my assertion of that claim. But if you look over here and you say, well, the values here, it's about the same, but what's changed is the certainty. So in this case, maybe we say, okay, we'll put this output into a list, but let's not automatically make a change because we're not internally that sure about what we're doing. We still have a guess. It's still maybe even a good guess. It might even be the right guess. And this is a good enough guess to present it to the user and let people make a decision for themselves. But it's not enough for the AI to make the decision on its own. When we look at the end of this, we really have no idea what's going on. Even though our statistical model in the middle, at that last point, says, yeah, we think we know what the output is, but it says the uncertainty here is the entire range. We have really no idea what's going on, but here's a guess anyway. When you're in a situation like this, maybe you don't even want to put it on a menu for somebody to select. Or maybe you do. And these are sort of the decisions that we have to make as designers. So if we come back to who makes the decision, if you have a situation which is very understood by the model in a context that's well known, and the AI knows what it's doing, then we say, let the AI make the decision. If we have no idea what's going on, and we don't know what to do, then we say, let the human make the decision, because it really should be up to the person at this point. In reality, almost everything will be smack in the middle of this, where you have some shared decision-making. And this is what you see on the main screen of MBUX, where we provide some options, and we've made the decision, or the AI's made the decision, to narrow down the list and provide a couple options for you, and then the final decision is based on the human input. And this is an example of shared decision-making. So with decision-making, there's some things that are great for an AI to do and some that are really bad for an AI to do. And there's one thing that you just can't leave up to AI, and that's privacy. So with any of these systems, they look at your data, they look at your information, and they really know a lot about you. In a lot of cases, these AIs can learn more about you than even you have the internal reflection to provide that same insight on yourself. And so a lot of people have very strong opinions about how much they want to share, how much they want to give to an artificial intelligence. So some systems would say, do you want to use machine learning to make your experience better, yes or no? And a lot of people will say no. A lot of people will say yes until their friend tells them what it's doing, then they'll come back and say no. We want to give people exactly the experience they want instead of trying to coerce them into an experience that maybe they want, maybe they don't want. So here we give them a huge number of privacy settings. We let people determine individually if they want destination settings, whether they want music settings, whether they want contact settings. Because maybe you say, well, I don't really care if people see on the screen what I'm listening to. If it says, okay, you're going to go listen to some really embarrassing Christmas music in July or something like that. Okay, it's a little embarrassing, but it's not really the end of the world, so share it. But when I look at the destinations, maybe I'm worried that if I'm going to drive to Ford for some reason, and then later on my coworkers are going to get in the car and they say, hey, why were you at Ford? Maybe this is something that I want to really protect against, so nobody's asking why I'm driving to my competitors' places. To this extent, we also allow one to deactivate the learning for a set period of time, in this case 24 hours. And so you can click on this, and it will disable the whole system for 24 hours and automatically re-enable. So you don't have to remember that you switched it off to come back and switch it back on again. Or prompt the question, hey, why did you turn off your system the other day? And so with this sort of setting, we really make sure that we respect the people's privacy. With a strong privacy UI, we can increase usership, increase trust, and provide people the experience they really want. For us, because Daimler is obviously an extremely privacy-oriented company, we also take care of this in our engineering as well. We do all the learning with Edge AI, so all the predictions are done on the head unit, all the data is saved on the head unit. Nothing leaves the car. All the algorithms are developed in-house by Mercedes, and they're deployed by Mercedes as well. So it doesn't even go through the suppliers, and it's not sitting on the specification lists. So that even if somebody did break into your car, because none of the data goes to the back end, but if somebody breaks into your car, somehow manages to hack the head unit, somehow gets the information out of it, they still won't know how to decipher this, and it still doesn't store all the information for all the trips. So we try to make sure that we have a very strict control that we return to the user so they can make the decision to save their information how they want it. And so I'm just going to hammer this one more time, that AI and intelligence of all kinds is about decision making. And we use this to make decisions about content. We use this to make decisions about layout. We use this to make decisions about proactivity. And we use this to make decisions about privacy. And this is how we as Mercedes-Benz are pushing forward intelligent interfaces into the future. Thanks.